Coming up on 6:50, Marketplace Morning Report is next. And then on Morning Edition, President Trump is directing Vice President J.D. Vance to eliminate divisive anti-American ideology from Smithsonian museums, educational centers, and the National Zoo. That's this morning on Morning Edition from NPR and WNYC. Still 46 degrees out there. Here comes the sun this morning. Partly sunny on this Friday at a high of 64. And then tomorrow, mostly sunny and all the way up to 79 degrees with a light wind. Sunday, mostly cloudy and 60, and then back up to 70 on Monday. Once again, right now, mid-40s and clouds out there. This is WNYC. New York, it's 6:52.
WNYC supporters include Focus Features presenting The Ballad of Wallace Island. A superfan who lives on a remote island orchestrates a reunion of his favorite former band for a private performance, starring Tom Basden, Tim Key, and Carey Mulligan. Only in theaters today.
WNYC is independent public radio, free to all, but it's not free to operate. For-profit media can raise subscription fees and put important news behind a paywall. But WNYC doesn't have fees or paywalls. We rely on something much more powerful: you. WNYC's monthly sustainers provide the strong, stable foundation that makes our work possible. Not a sustainer yet? Just visit WNYC.org/donate and thanks.
Bank fees, home loans, student loans, we've got you covered this morning.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Progressive Insurance, providing direct car insurance rates side by side with other insurance carriers. Customers can see rates and find an option that works for their needs. Now that's Progressive. Learn more at progressive.com.
I'm David Brancaccio in Los Angeles. The Senate has voted to let banks keep charging more for overdrafts. They're typically around $35 per occurrence, but the Biden administration had moved to push the fees down to as little as $5. But the banking industry opposed this, and Congress could take the bank's view. Marketplace's Novo Safo has more.
The vote in the Senate was 52-48 along party lines, with Republican Senator Josh Hawley joining Democrats in opposition. The Consumer Bankers Association applauded the Senate's action, saying it would particularly benefit consumers who lack access to credit and count on overdraft protections to pay for necessities. The rule at issue came about as part of the Biden administration's campaign against so-called junk fees. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau said banks were charging customers far more than what it cost to provide overdraft protections. The House will also have to vote to overturn, and President Trump would have to sign the resolution. The CFPB issued the overdraft fee limit during the waning days of the Biden administration. That gave Congress a 60-day window to reverse the regulation. Any reversal would be permanent. A future administration would not be allowed to issue a similar rule without specific congressional authorization. I'm Novo Safo for Marketplace.
Applications for home loans are way up at Bank of America. The number of people trying for mortgages is up 80% January through now. I mean, 'tis the season as people with families buy in winter, spring to close ahead of the next school year, but it's not all seasonal. Here's Marketplace's Samantha Fields.
In January, mortgage rates were hovering around 7%. By March, they'd come down closer to 6.5%. Alan Seelenbinder at Bank of America says in this market, even that small dip can make a difference.
The slight change in interest rates and also the slight increase in housing inventory.
He says both helped drive up mortgage applications recently. Daniel Hale, chief economist at Realtor.com, says it's too early to say whether that's a good sign for the housing market. Other data is mixed. Pending home sales, for example, are down almost 4% compared to a year ago.
Mortgage applications are up, but pending home sales are down. That might suggest that more buyers in the market today are using mortgages as opposed to cash buyers.
Not necessarily that more people are buying. Either way, Chris Mayer at Columbia Business School says there's not much to indicate the market is really picking up.
Overall, spring selling market is kind of a bit slower than people had kind of hoped it would be.
Some of that is perennial affordability issues, but he says some of it is uncertainty.
The nervousness in the economy, the nervousness about policy, there's some of that is hitting the housing market.
With headlines about car prices and other things maybe spiking soon, he says people may be wondering, is now the moment to buy a home? I'm Samantha Fields for Marketplace.
Checking the numbers, Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ futures are all down in the 1 to 0.2% range. Stock and car companies are coming off a bad day, with GM down 7.4% yesterday, Ford down 4%, Toyota fell 2.8%. Some of this is President Trump saying his higher tariffs next week will cover all imported cars, trucks, and parts. It's also an article in the Wall Street Journal revealing that earlier this month, Trump told auto CEOs they'd better not raise prices given the tariffs. If this were backed up by punishment of some sort, the price difference would largely come out of the pockets of stockholders. GM stock is down another 0.4% in pre-market trading now.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Certified Financial Planner Professionals. CFP professionals are committed to acting in their clients' best interest. Learn more about CFP professionals at letsmakeaplan.org.
Student loan balances and repayments remained stable through the end of last year. That's the top line on a report from the New York Federal Reserve. But there may be turbulence ahead with the end of some relief programs that started during the worst of the pandemic. Marketplace's Kaylee Wells reports.
There are a few reasons the total $1.6 trillion in U.S. student loan debt hasn't gone up much. Biden-era forgiveness programs is one. A decline in higher education enrollment is another. But Dalia Jimenez, who runs the Student Loan Law Initiative at UC Irvine, says the biggest reason was the pandemic-era interest pause.
For 3+ years, student loan borrowers who had federal loans didn't have to make any payments on their student loans, and their balances weren't increasing because interest wasn't being assessed.
But that relief ended at the end of September. Now, nearly 10 million student loan borrowers are past due.
This isn't bad news relative to, I think, the really bad news that are coming.
Because once you're 90 days late on a loan payment, it can hurt your credit score. At that point, the debt is reported as delinquent. The Fed says that based on these numbers, delinquency rates of 90 days or more will likely be higher than they were before the pandemic.
I've had a lot of borrowers be like, oh my goodness, my credit just dropped. And I wasn't paying any attention to my student loans until I saw my credit score drop.
Betsy Mayotte founded the Institute of Student Loan Advisors. She says the delinquency spike is serious.
The 90-day delinquency numbers are not just a canary in that coal mine. That's a whole flock of birds in that coal mine. So we have a big concern about future default.
Default is what comes after delinquency. For most loans, that happens after it's delinquent for 270 days. The loan can get sent to collections, and the government can garnish Social Security benefits or wages. It's way worse. And that rate wasn't great before the pandemic either.
Before the pandemic, a student loan borrower defaulted every 26 seconds. More than 1 million people defaulted on a loan every year.
Mike Pierce is executive director of the Student Loan Protection Center. He points to 2 recent executive orders from President Trump. One restricts a program that forgives debt for workers in nonprofit and public sector jobs after a decade of service. The other pauses affordable repayment plans. These 2 moves are not reflected in this data, and Pierce says they will make even more borrowers default.
We expect that to be double or triple in the best case scenario here. It's possible that 5 million student loan borrowers could default this year.
It takes about 9 months to default on a student loan, so those notices likely won't start showing up until later this year. I'm Kaylee Wells for Marketplace.
And here's a number expressing the widening chasm between the U.S. and Canada as a trade war unfolds. Travel Weekly is reporting that bookings of Canada-U.S. plane tickets are down 70% through this coming summer. Our executive producer is Kelly Silvera. Our digital producers are Jarrett Dang and Dylan Miettinen. Our engineers are Jay Siebold and Brian Allison. In Los Angeles, I'm David Brancaccio. It's the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.